Welcome. We bid you welcome. John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, coming to you from my music corner of the world. Today, we got people from all over this world. Of course, we have the faithful co-captain on this Year of the Priest and these Wednesday series that you've been watching for like the last year or so, John the Music Nut. How you doing, my friend?
They try to dominate. I'll be a thorn in their pride. How y'all doing? Peter, welcome.
And then, of course, from his neck of the woods, his music corner of the world, from Rock Daydream Nation. First time you've been on the channel in quite some time here, brother. If I don't
It
say so
has indeed.
myself.
It has
Peter Kerr,
indeed.
how you doing, my friend?
Good, mate. Good. And thank you for letting me gate crash this Priest Fest party, which
Yes.
I've thoroughly enjoyed watching. You guys are doing a stellar job.
Thank you.
So I thought I'd gate crash it.
Yeah. Hey,
There
we can use it. We can use all the gate crashers we can get. So
Right.
you know, if everybody keeps asking us to do certain things in the Priest series, this could go the entire year. So so anyway, yeah. So we are on episode 19. Y'all have probably been waiting for us to talk about this little gem, Nostradamus. So let's go with little just quick stuff on this one. Released June 17th, 2008, recorded between 2006 and 2007 at the Old Smithy Studio in Kempsey, Worcester, UK. Genre, this is what Wiki calls this: genre, heavy metal, symphonic metal, prog metal. Okay, yeah, I'll go along with that.
Yes.
102 minutes and 48 seconds. Woo! This is definitely an epic. Needless to say, produced by Glenn and KK. This would also be the last album with KK. They would eventually do the tour, but hey, we're not gonna we don't I don't want to jump ahead of myself. That's for John for a little later. Chart action. Peter, do you know what where this album charted in your neck of the woods? By chance? Because if you don't, I do.
I think he's frozen.
I think Peter might be frozen. Anyway, so
You know that he's looking very intently to
yeah, I
see
think
the
he's
chart
looking.
placement.
I think he's looking very intently. So Australian album charts. This went to number 17 in Peter's part of the world. In Austria, this hit number 13. Up in Mike Ladano and Metal Rogers' neck of the woods, this went to number 9. Nice chart up there. Belgian albums. There's two different charts here. Not sure which is which. 179, the other was 50. So there's two different charts action there. Danish charts, number 17. Dutch albums, charts 38. French 38. Finnish 3. German 5. Hungarian 12. Okay, we're getting all kinds of countries here. Italian 26, which is weird because there's a lot of Italians being spoken on this album. New Zealand, hey, Steve Deluxe, how are you doing, my friend?
Steve.
31, and then up in Ove Lendums and my buddy Paul's neck of the woods. We just lost Peter for a second. This went up to number 12. Scottish albums. This is David Gallagher's neck of the woods. Terrible Scottish accent. Number 30. Spanish charts number 26, Swedish charts 5, Swiss number 12, the UK number 30, UK rock and metal albums number 1, US Billboard charts number 11, certified gold in Russia. Okay, sold about 42,000 copies in its first week. They were probably all returned to maybe the next day or so. But anyway, all this came from an idea from the manager, Bill Kerbishley, and it was pitched to the band while they were on tour. KK and Rob both seemed to be really on board with this album. Rob really dug into the idea and really presented what he felt was some really strong lyrics. There's a lot of symphonic stuff, lots of keyboards, lots of choirs, lots of all kinds of stuff. So today, since this album has about, as we joked off air, about 54 tracks, It's not that really that many. I think 17 or 18 or something like that. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of go in a little bit of a round. But before we go into the round, what we like to do with everybody we've had the guest on the show, Peter Kerr, what is your point of entry into Judas Priest? How many times have you seen him? And whatever other information you want to get into. And then we'll kind of kick off the round with a couple tracks that you want to highlight.
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, I'd say I'm a bit of a Priest fan. I've seen them 4 times. They first toured Australia in 2008, I think. So they took a long time to get to Australia. And I've seen them 3 times in Australia. And I actually went and took my wife. We went to New York, Jones Beach, and saw the tour of the British Steel Anniversary, supported by Whitesnake. So that was a fantastic concert. Unfortunately, the world's tallest American was in front of my wife. She didn't see much of the concert. Anyway, that's another story. But it was a fantastic show. I love the Priest. My point of entry regarding Priest would be British Steel. I also like Screaming for Vengeance. So if I was going to be held in a corner, I think those two. I love the classic 70s, early 80s Priest. That's my sweet spot. But look, Judas Priest, you look at their catalogue, they are musically quite adventurous and they've covered a lot of different genres. And this is going to be a really good chat because this album covers a lot of territory.
Yes, it does. All kinds of places.
Absolutely.
All right. So I guess let's just kind of start maybe a couple tracks a piece. We'll just kind of go around and round and round, and where it stops, we'll see where we go. So Peter, go ahead and pick a couple tracks.
Absolutely. Maybe just do a little bit of a precursor to this. So who was Nostradamus? Nostradamus was a medieval medical practitioner, or what you could call was some sort of a doctor. But at the same time, he was a seer. And a seer is somebody that can see into the future. And he did all of these sort of predictions that I think 70% or 60%, I know the folk out there in YouTube world will correct me, that sort of came true. Now, the context of this album came out in 2008, and I think Rob Halford was attracted to the idea of Nostradamus because there are a lot of things that were happening in the world. You had 9/11, there was a lot of terrorism, there were a lot of wars, and he thought that this would be an interesting change of direction for the band from Angel of Retribution, which was kind of a meat and potatoes return to Judas Priest. Priest have always had an appetite to doing something different and trying something a little different. Now, in the early 2000s, Euro power metal was quite strong. Now, I'm talking about bands like Nightwish, Epica, Dragon Force. I think that Rob Halford getting attracted to the idea of Nostradamus as a concept album and doing something sort of like a soundtrack or something even more like a theatre piece, but he was also interested in the movement, the Euro power metal movement, which is neoclassical, very melodic, a little bit of shred, well, actually not a little bit, a lot of shred, and putting it into something that, is kind of a concept album. So this album came out, copped a lot of flack, but if it had the lead singer of Nightwish or Epica, would it have been sort of revered so badly? I don't think so. I think it's because it was so completely different to the rest of the Priest catalogue. And one thing you've got to say about Priest, they're ambitious and they've got a lot of musical curiosity, and a band that doesn't have musical curiosity kind of dies. And to me, I think when you listen to the first track, which is Prophecy, you know that you're in for something different. You've got Rob Halford singing in these growly vocals, and he's oscillating between the lower and upper register. And there's this deep, doomy riff that anchors the song. He sets the premise with the vocals of I Am Nostradamus. A lot of the early tracks remind me of early Sabbath when they go really doomy. You know, that Superstar off Sabotage,
Mhm.
and
Super
which gets
bizarre, yes.
played at the intro of every Sabbath album, tour. So Prophecy, that's the first one I'd like to tee off with you guys, because I think that's kind of the introduction, that sort of anchors that. And another thing, folks, is that this album is like a symphony. Now, when you go to a classical music concert, your Beethovens, your Mozarts, all those classic composers, they do a lot of themes, and they reintroduce the themes again and again through the suites of the music. So this is sort of not just a rock piece. This is sort of a classical musical piece, which has been very well thought out, where there are lots of themes that are coming in and out and intertwining. So I think, yeah. Anyway, what do you guys think of Prophecy?
Okay, I think it's a strong opener. I mean, after Dawn of Creation, which is works like an intro and builds into Prophecy. This is the most played song off of Nostradamus Live, and for good reason. It's because it just has a fantastic riff. It has a great bridge. Another, with Priest, the best songs are ones with the great bridges on them. The solos on this are really strong. The strings work very well with the guitars on the track. I think there's a lot of songs on here where the symphonic elements are overpowering the band. And that puts a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But here it works well. Excellent track. Nice breakdown after the solo. Excellent track here. This is one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, I concur. It is definitely one of the songs that sticks in my head. That whole "I am Nostradamus," that whole line just kind of like, it's infectious. That riff is infectious. That the whole, even though, Dawn of Creation, you would think would be almost like a joyous entrance beginning piece, and it's written in almost like a minor key, and there's like a sadness about it, really. And you would think creation should be a beautiful thing, but then it goes into that it goes into that little tweaky guitar line that eventually goes into the crushing riff of Prophecy. Yeah, I just thought I love the solo for this. I just thought it was just a really good, proper Priest solo. So yeah, it's probably I agree, probably one of the stronger tracks off this thing. Good, definitely a good one to start off with.
Yeah, it's a cracker, isn't it? And this is when I saw them in 2008, one of two songs that they played off the Nostradamus. So they weren't really pushing it hard. Like the first time they're in Australia, they did sort of a greatest hits, but they only just put two songs from Nostradamus, which I found a little bit odd.
Yeah, Ken KK mentions that it's like they felt they really dropped the ball with this. He really wanted to see more. He wanted to go out and do the whole thing out there, and I think Rob probably would have done the same thing. But yeah, they both seem to think, yeah, they dropped the ball with the presentation of the album.
Um, I disagree. I think
I
Rob
mean,
lately has actually looked back on the album with fond reverence and sort of said that this is going to be an album that in years to come people will sort of appreciate a lot more. So maybe KK felt that way, but I think Rob was 100% invested into the material. And you've got to understand that this album was put out that it was going to be a theatre show. That was the game plan if this was a success, that it was going to be a fully Broadway, West End, or a stage spectacular. And that's why this album is double. There's a lot of interludes, and you can imagine that you close your eyes, that you can see that there's there's moments that are pure theatre that you couldn't really sort of understand in the realms of a traditional meat and potatoes Judas Priest album.
right.
The musical interludes, you can imagine that there are some bits where Rob, you can imagine there's the spotlights on him and he's just singing to the audience like Phantom of the Opera. So if you think of that they're creating a cinema experience or a theater experience, this album works a lot better for you. But if you think of it as a Judas Priest, a rocker, like screaming for vengeance, then you may have some issues.
Yeah.
When I first heard this album, I didn't like it. And I've looked at a lot of YouTube comments and a lot of social media, and there was one I want to share with you. He goes, I heard it first time, I detested it. Second time, it got better. Third time, I reconciled with it. And it was it was like 10 steps. And by the end of it, he thought it was a masterpiece. It's an album that you've got to listen to a few times, quite a few times for the penny to drop.
Right.
So anyway, sorry, I'm jumping the gun a little bit.
No, because this one thing I always thought between the Phantom of the Opera notion, but I thought there's lots of moments where I felt they're almost crossing into Jim Steinman territory here. You know, the way that the dramatic Meatloaf songs that that would be done that he wrote and produced. You know, to me, some of those songs kind of have that kind of a feel to it. So I don't, let's see. So yeah, Prophecy, great opener. Let's see. I'm gonna kind of be a little different here because I want to. There's one I want to talk about a little bit. And normally I would let John go second. So, but up to this time, we're just changing everything up today, people. The song that has really grabbed my attention recently is it's really kind of the whole it's really on side the disc 2. The song Alone. That that was one you were gonna take. All right, well, John and I will riff on this one. Anyway, I don't know, there was something about that track when I was in the, I'm gonna give you all a weird visual, folks. I was in the bathroom, kind of brushing my hair and just kind of, and I had this album playing, and that song was on, and that chorus comes on. We don't want to be alone. We said all along, we just want to be left alone. And I'm just like, I take my hairbrush and I'm like, we said all along, we don't want to belong. We said all along, we just want to be left alone. You know, I'm just like getting into this thing. And, you know, it's infectious. Take it out of the story and just say, okay, let's look at this from a Judas Priest perspective. Okay, it's not a barn burner song. It's a very slow plotting kind of song. But boy, those lyrics just grab you, you know.
Yeah,
And
it's
yes,
a good song.
and yes, it's coming out of a time where he basically has been almost kind of exiled from people because there's a lot, you know, back then there was a lot of the persecution going on. So there was, you know, he probably feared for his, I'm sure he was fearing for his life. You know, the whole idea of being a prophet with doing all these prophecies, I'm sure some of that comes, it's like they say in the lyrics, does it come out of madness? You know, is it really happy? You know, what is he really getting this from? But yeah, you have this nice acoustic opening from Alone that comes out of Exiled. You get this just plotting chord verse, and it's like a crowd anthem in a concept album. Who knew? But anyway, you get a nice long break with the acoustic. You get a good, you know, little strummy part going on there. But man, that chorus, I just absolutely love it. John, I know I stole your song, so
It's all good.
so have at it, my friend.
An album that has too many ballads, in my opinion. This one shines like the sun.
Yeah.
Rob sounds amazing on this. This album, you want to hear how great a vocalist Rob Halford is. As John and Peter pointed out, this meant a lot to Rob, and you can tell by the performances on here. I love those screams that he does at the end of each line, every 3 lines in the chorus. Wonderful. This is beautifully done. Again, just like on Prophecy, here the symphonics and the band work well together. Excellent track. Heavy yet elegant is how I would describe this.
Yes.
Because it's a ballad, but it's still really heavy with the strings in the background. It adds adds to the heaviness here, the strings do, where sometimes it may make it more mellow and tranquil. Here it makes it heavier. This kills. One of the best songs on the album. Easy.
Yeah, it's a mighty fine song. I disagree a little bit with John the Music Nut about too many ballads, because as I said, you've got to look at it in the context of it being a theatre piece, and it's telling a story, and there's going to be light and shade. I mean, if there were less ballads, it'd all be, rollicking and that galloping. There's got to be little interludes, so there's sort of light and shade. And as I said, I reckon there's a script behind this, that somebody has storyboarded it. I reckon they were ready to, if this was a success, they were ready to put it up on Broadway or put it out, and they had all the set designs, and it didn't go to plan. It charted initially quite well, but I think if you look at the second and third week sales, it would have gone boop.
Yes.
When a lot of the fans thought this is not what we wanted. So
Nice.
you got to give them a tick for ambition. Ambition's a wonderful thing, trying something different. But I think, the ballads are right for the whole concept of the theatre album. But this is a great song. It's got full of symphonic sweep, and there's just the musicology on this album's amazing. Don Airey does a lot of the keyboard work, and there is some, I reckon he does a lot of the keyboard bass work, because he did a lot of keyboard bass on what was it, Painkiller, the Ram It Down. So I think he's a multi-instrumental, does a lot of multi-instrumental work, and a lot of the scoring. I think Don Airey was right in helping Judas Priest with this. And it's kind of a combination of a lot of synth washes and synth lines and the strings and real live instruments. So look, alone, it's just got I love where he does that high-pitched singing. Rob's vocals on this album are outstanding, aren't they? And there are some bits where his voice is kind of a little bit fragile. It breaks, but it adds a lot of emotional gravitas to it, it's just him being raw. I really think that he was very invested in this. You can't sort of say that there's no emotion. He's really invested in the material, and there's nothing worse when you're listening to an album and it sounds phony, where they're just chasing some sort of a trend. I think they really were, or Rob Halford especially was very invested in this album.
Yep. I would definitely concur with that. He's definitely kind of want us to read more about how he really dived into this and dove into the whole material. So all right, John, since I stole your song, I'll let you lead off with one of the weekend. Your next one.
Okay, the song that I quoted at the beginning is called Conquest. Now, this is killer. This is very majestic metal is what you have here. Again, this is where the strings and the guitars work well together. The chorus is a killer. The guitar lines are really heavy. The solo works within the song. Killer pre-chorus on this as well. I think this album, in my opinion, takes a little bit to get going, but once it kicks in, there are a lot of highlights on it. I think Conquest is killer. I think it's one of the most memorable songs on the album too. It's something I think that would also go over very well live. So Conquest is my choice here.
Yeah, it's a killer track, John. And I'll put a question to you folks. In the 70s was the era of the Broadway show hitting the top of the charts, the concept album. If this album came out in 78, and I'm talking about, remember an album called War of the Worlds? Sort of concept albums. Do you think this album would have done better? Maybe.
Maybe.
I think so. Because maybe this is an album that wasn't built for the times. Concept albums don't really sell. But I just think it's sort
unless
of
it's
like
called The Wall.
That came out in 79, 80.
Yeah.
But I just think that this is an album that it's got old school ambition, but maybe it wasn't quite built for the times. concept doesn't really go. But look, that's a great song. It's got a lot of sweep to it, John, and operatic. That's what I've been saying. And I think Rob loves opera. And there was this thing that he was banding around for a while, that he wanted to get the three tenors. He wanted to get Jeff from Queensryche, and he wanted to get Dio, and
There
yeah,
you go.
yep. So Rob is a musical sponge, and he loves a lot of music. And yeah, I just think at this particular period of, he was listening to a lot of classical music, had a lot of opera, and he wanted to go down that path. And yeah, comes out in spades, and that's.
My thought about Conquest was, one of the notes I wrote here was like, you talk about the three tenors. Well, who was that third? We didn't say the name of that third tenor, but I felt like this song kind of had a little bit of a Maiden feel to it, at some points. So you could almost hear Bruce probably singing this, and you could certainly,
Oh, yeah.
some of the guitar lines, there's some Maiden-like feel to it in how they attack the song. But yeah, I thought Peace and Conquest, I thought both strong stuff. Um, the thing I liked about Conquest is, I think it was just Rob's way of in saying through the lyrics and the story of, it's like, have faith, the Savior's coming. And I really think because you're going through all these different things that he's doing these prophecies about, whether it's war, the idea of death and pestilence and plague, and all these different things. But I think Nostradamus was also steeped in faith. And so I think somewhere down that line, he just felt like, have faith. A savior's coming. So hang in there, folks. So, all right, Peter, what's another one you want to tackle?
Revelations. So again, this very reminds me of a variant of Superstar, Sabbath at the start. And I actually, when I was listening to it, I played both. You could probably do a match between both songs, just that initial start. Doomy, ominous, sinister, menacing. That's what I describe this song. And I love Halford's phrasing, where he does one word and there's a pause, one word and a pause. And it draws the listener in and makes you really listen to the lyrics. Because I thought that was quite a very smart move, because you want to draw the listener in, make them look at the lyric sheet and go along with the storyline. Otherwise, you're just listening to the music. Lyrics are just as important as the music on this album, whether you like the lyrics or not, but it's telling a story. And a concept album without taking notice of the lyrics is not a concept album. You're just listening to music and it's just a blur. Classic riff. There's a lot of opera in it. I like how he also oscillates into this lower register, and he's playing a character. So he's got it in his head. I think there's a bit of planning in this show. He's playing a character, and he's got this lower register. I said this is like Mozart. It's like a mini symphony. There's just so much complexity. This is just, a notch above a lot of the power metal that was out in that era, because it's just so damn complex. I love it. Revelations.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That song with that, as you said, that dramatic one word line, at one word at a time, it does draw you in. There is an absolute drama that's circulating around in that song, and it is a very heavy song. Again, you get that symphonic string section that kind of makes it almost sound heavier. I was thinking of like almost like a sound of like a particular orchestra that I would hear. And I can't think of the man's name, but he was the guy that did the score for Bram Stoker's Dracula. They came out in the early 90s. I think it was a Polish man. I think his last name was Killar, Wojciech Killar, something like that. But he had a specific sound with his strings, And every time I heard those strings backing the music, I just thought, wow, is that Wojciech Kilara? Please forgive me if I'm getting the name wrong. But boy, because I've heard other scores of him with that stuff, and man, that's just sends chills down my spine when I hear that. So I always I like that little flamenco piece during the thing. But again, it's like I mentioned earlier, the weight that must come with being a seer, with being a prophet. I I can't even imagine what that's got to be like for someone, because that's you're putting a lot of dependence and a lot of thought into what you're doing and how that translates to people. And obviously, I'm going back to biblical times, because obviously I think of a lot of the prophets in the Bible, all of the minor prophets and the major prophets, they a lot of their stuff would eventually come true through their biblical teachings. And Nostradamus is obviously not much different. There's a lot of stuff that has come to kind of pass. Maybe not exactly how he says, but there's certainly some things there. So John, your thoughts about Revelation?
My least favorite part of the song was the one word, and then was when they'd say one word and then the music would kick in. But when you talk about it in the scope of the story of Nostradamus, okay, it would work. That is true. So everything else I do like about the song. I think it's musically, I think it's a kick-ass song. And it's another track where these symphonics actually make the song heavier. I love the pre-chorus. I'll spread the word around the world. I think that is killer. If you go and you read the liner notes, this page here tells you like a small story it tells you Nostradamus' story, sums it up pretty well. If you follow that and then you follow the album, it follows his life from beginning to end, and it just goes in that exact order. So if you think about it, if you look at it from that perspective, it really works. I think maybe some of this should have been more of an instrumental, because the instrumental passages on this are very well done. Excuse me. But this is one of the stronger tracks on the album, Revelations. Absolutely.
All right. So now I'm going to jump toward the end of the album. And I want to talk about the Calm Before the Storm / Nostradamus, the title track. This song, if this had ended the album, I might have been okay with it, because while Future of Mankind is not a bad song, when the after the Calm Before the Storm part finishes, then you kick into this bludgeoning riff that I'm thinking, okay, somebody was listening to Neon God. Okay.
Yep.
That's kind of how I felt. I was like, that chugging riff there. I felt like, oh yeah, now we're into Wasp territory or something here. Cause I can't think of the song that it kind of reminded me of, but it certainly could tie into like the very last song on the Neon God Part 2, the final overture kind of song, the big 13-minute epic. That song when that thing starts chugging, I'm just like, yes, finally we get a good ripping song that you really can just sink your teeth into. All through his life, though, as the song talks about, he held on to his belief. However you want to interpret it, that's what his belief was, and he held on to that till the very end. But yeah, I just love this. I love that track. Just love the aggressiveness about it.
Can I ask a question? Do you
Please.
think it being a double album, that your patience was waning through it?
No question.
Because I just think in this age, because we've got so much social media, the platforms that we listen to music, it is a bit of a stretch to listen to a double album. Because I've got to admit it, when I gate crashed this party and I listened to it for the first time, I thought, oh boy. Because I've been listening to it going, I work about 40 minutes away and I've got a car that's got a CD player. And this album's been with me for about a month, but it took a long time to listen to the album again and again for the penny to drop. If you are used to listening to tracks and don't have the patience but beyond a single album, and I've always said the Peter Kerr theory of a good rock album is about 40 minutes. So this really stretched it, and it's into, really going, past that threshold. Do you think there were some times that you just sort of lost patience with this album?
It can. Okay. I've had this album for a few years and I've heard it several times, and it's just, I think part of the problem is the sequencing on side 2 when you got so many ballads almost in a row. And that really makes it a chore. It to the point where it almost puts you to sleep. When Nostradamus, the song kicks in, I'm like, whoosh, finally, but I've always felt that way about this album. And I can listen to a long album, but I have to be intrigued. You have to keep me in. I can't go through I could go through an interlude now and then, but when you have so many songs that are really slow and so many acoustic numbers, and eventually they all start to sound the same, then yes, I'm going to get bored. So like John, when Nostradamus kicks in, and I wrote on here joyous, heavier than Painkiller, but Rob now sounds full operatic on this at times. To me, this is classic Priest. This is the Priest I know and love. Like, okay, but it's more 1990 Painkiller, and that was when they brought me back in. So, yes, I mean, some people it might be, we have shorter attention spans as a society now. But I like long concept albums. This is a little too long. Like Operation Mindcrime, for example. That's about 58 minutes. That's perfect for me.
Yeah,
there's not a wasted note on that.
Yeah, but 101 minutes, that is a bit of a stretch. I think this project was doomed in our era to put a stretch. And my theory is, I'll stand by it. They did the full-blown theatre show. They showed everything. What they should have perhaps done is done highlights from Nostradamus and just picked 10 songs, rockers, a couple of really outstanding ballads without the interludes, and push that. And when the theatre show came in, to the folk that are really attuned to that genre of music, do the double album. Package it that way. So I think this is I like that. Sorry, it's a cliche, isn't it? The old show topic.
Yeah.
Great single album, double album.
Yep.
So I reckon if they did highlights from Nostradamus and stripped it to 10, killer.
Yeah.
Another thing I think about this album, just in the history of Judas Priest, you come back with Rob with Angel Retribution, and then you do this. I would have built on that momentum, then try to ask your fans to get into a 1 hour and 41 minute album. That's my opinion, because you have this momentum going on. You're playing the big places again that you weren't playing when Ripper was there, as good as he was. And then you put out something that's very challenging to really get into after you're having songs on AOR radio again with Angel Retribution. So I think the timing really hurt this too. And the fact that, yes, it's long. Okay.
It's unusual timing, John, but I think there was a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a clue with a certain song called Loch Ness.
Yes.
which refer to our show on Angel of Retribution, which
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's the stepping stone to this album. But look, musical ambition, I always give that a big tick. But timing, maybe they just, yeah, we haven't done this. But it was interesting that KK left. I think emotionally, there are a couple of people in this project that were very disappointed that it failed, and they were never the same.
yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah. I think KK kind of mentions that he was like Rob was talking about, hey, I don't think I can do these tours anymore. I think we need to, just have one last shot, and and KK was KK was still feeling okay. I think Glenn was starting to have a few issues, physical issues. Scott was maybe having a little this and that. So I mean, just going by what I was seeing there, I think Rob was also, but Rob seemed to be kind of thinking about maybe it's time to take a break. But then again, he goes into another Halford album right soon after I think this. So,
or they do a Broadway show, play in one city, do shows periodically for a period of a month, and that would have suited everybody. Maybe it was leading to it, like a residency.
yeah,
That's my theory.
yeah,
Excellent point.
very good point.
So,
Very, very good point.
And KK was leading into that sort of that period of his life that sweet. We've built a show and one city, and there's a little bit of sort of security.
Mm-hmm.
But when it sort of fell through, it's back to the grind. I mean, nobody likes a project that fails because you've got to put your tail between the legs. You've got to get around the table and you go, okay, where do we go? Back to basics, back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
So I think there was so much disappointment, especially when you invest, because listen to this, folks, there's so much that's been invested in this project, the arrangements, the musicians, the mapping of the storyline, and for it to fail, I think that would have been quite devastating.
Yeah.
A lot of money would have been invested on this project. Anyway.
All right, John, let's hit us with another track.
All right, this is the last song on disc 1, Persecution. Here we go. Something to go that kicks ass and takes names, but it's got this ethereal keyboard intro and those whispers bringing you in. And then Scott kicks in with those drums, and then we're off to the races. Got this driving rhythm here. The riff on here is similar, I think, to Deal with the Devil, which we talked about in Angel Retribution. But another good bridge on this. The chorus absolutely kills. And on this first disc, there's more heavier stuff on this, so this doesn't come off as jarring, like finally, like on Nostradamus. Here you got some songs that really rock and are heavy, and you got some of the slower stuff in between. But here, this brings this first part of the album to a fantastic close. They has that keyboard at the end, which may not fit in at the end of a song, but it works well when you're going into the second disc to tell the story. So there it works. Persecution kills. Something I would have loved to have heard live. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that would have been a killer track, John. I love the Egypto chord progressions. It's got a bit of Egypto. There's a little bit of Egypto snaked into this album. I really like it. He's got that high-pitched death metal voice, draws in, and then it's double track between low and upper register, which is nice. The growl, so he's expressing anger, pain. This is where the worlds collide, where you've got speed metal clashing with Euro power metal. It's like,
yeah,
like that. There's a lot of swoop to it. But one thing I like about this song, there's this underpinning, and I sort of said it's like an early Metallica guitar line that snakes through the whole song. It underpins it. And Scott Travis, his metronomic drumming works perfectly. I have no complaints about Scott Travis's drumming on this album. It's perfect for the material. It's metronomic and it just pushes things along. And I've got to say another thing. The guitar playing on this album is beautiful. There's some of the most fantastic Tipton and KK solos you'll ever hear, and how they trade off each other. It's wonderful. So I'd be really interested to have a little bit of a solo package if they could just excise that out of this album and just listen to that, because folks, you'll hear some of, they're at the top of their powers, even though it's the last album for KK, but the guitar playing is just absolutely sublime. The trade-offs, that's the Priest for me. KK and Tipton.
Yes.
That's the sweet spot. I love them. And, no matter what personality issues or whether they were clashing, but on stage and on record, they were in synergy. And I love it when they do that guitar harmonizing. Nobody does it better. It's like that James Bond song. Nobody does it better.
Yeah, I can't really say much more about that song. It is a great disc closer. I love that, just that harkening back to the beginning of the not Dawn of Creation, but basically the beginning of the Prophecy song, and just crushing riffs, great guitar work. I mean, there's nothing much more I can really add to that. So yeah, great disc closer. I don't know if there's really any more songs we really want to tackle, because we could spend a lot.
One more.
Yeah,
my
Peter.
favorite.
Then go, my friend, go.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Visions. It's the best song on the album. This won a Grammy, I think, or nominated for a Grammy.
It's nominated. Yes,
nominated. It's killer track. This is the most Judas Priest sounding song on the album. Power chords alternating with that rolling cyclic guitar riff. It's classic Priest. So it's like a Trojan horse. In this symphonic, epic album, they've dropped a little nugget, and I'm surprised you guys haven't brought it up. I think it's easily my favorite track. It's the most Priest sounding song on the album. It's probably the most accessible, and if they pushed this as a single, the album may have done better and should have been played live.
So my one of the things I wrote about Visions is I felt like this could have been on a Trans-Siberian Orchestra album. For some reason, I don't know what made me think that, because there's a couple times where I've heard that, like I'm trying to remember which song it was, because it does have that dun 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 dun, and I want to say that's maybe that's Conquest, but there's one song where it kind of has that marching, like you hear in the Christmas Eve Sarajevo song. Well, you kind of get that a little bit too, but I don't know why I felt like I could hear this on TSO. Again, I think he's always wondering, are these visions really going to come to pass? Are they going to happen? Again, I think that's the insanity part that goes with the whole being of seer is what if this really does come to pass? I can only imagine what that must be like. So, but yeah, it was still a good song. I enjoyed Visions.
The thing I like about this song is how he vocally sits back. It's a little bit behind the beat, and it's kind of visions in the past, and it's sort of like he hangs a little bit behind the power chords. I love it. I'm getting a shiver up my spine. It's, when Peter Kerr gets a shiver up his spine, it's a good track, folks. And this is the one out of the whole album that I think I would peel out and put it in a mixtape and give it to John the Music Nut, and he'd groove on it. Wouldn't you, John?
I certainly would. And I wrote here, this was a song I was going to highlight. Reminds me of Defender's era Priest, because of that chugging groove. And 2 good bridges on this song, not one.
Yeah.
So, and the strings are kicking in on the second one, which works really well. This is another one of my issues with the album is sometimes I think the strings are a little overblown and overdone, but on the best songs like Visions, it works well. Yes, so yeah, definitely a highlight for me as well.
Yeah. And Travis is in the pocket.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's in the groove.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I really dig that song.
All right, let's see which is going to be my last song to talk about. Okay, so this I'm going to make this is going to be my last song I'll talk about that I'll highlight, and then I'll let John do his thing, and I'll let John talk about
I'm good.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm going to focus on one song, and then I'll let you do your tour stuff. How's that sound?
Sure.
Okay. So the last song I'm going to talk about, and this will be appropriate because these were my notes for it. Future of Mankind.
Okay.
Finally, the last song. That's literally what I wrote down here. The last song. A very grinding song as Nostradamus's life comes to an end, and he gives that final prophecy of what is to come. Again, I feel like there's a lot of Maiden-like twin harmonies happening here. Finishes with a very, I love how it finished it. It kind of has this little Slayery-like riff. Almost kind of like a hardcore kind of thing where you can see the singer. He's like, he's like trudging up and down the stage, or the people in the audience kind of doing their circle pits. But then it kind of goes into where it almost feels like it almost kind of has a feel of like the trial from The Wall.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of has that
Oh, yes.
that vibe with the spoken word, distorted spoken word in the background and stuff like that. So that's kind of how. But to me, finally, this album is over. It's the only reason I could see people putting this at the bottom of their lists is because you have to invest so much time into it. And sometimes it's just it's just not the one you reach for the most. And I think for me, while I don't find this a bad album, it's just a lot to take in. Especially if you want to get sucked into that story, but you don't have an hour and 40 minutes to kill to get through the entire album. Hence why, like the Neon God albums, rank lower in my. Not saying I didn't like them. I love the Neon God albums, but you want to take in that whole story, and you want to let that story just grip you and draw you in. But you don't have an hour and a half, or I remember what the Neon God albums clocked out at, both of them together. But you got to spend the time with this one if you really want the story to really sink into your bones.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Future Mankind, it's another strong track. Thing about both of these discs, they did end well, but I would have ended it with Nostradamus. I think it would have worked better if it ended with Nostradamus and we get to Future Mankind earlier. But in the prospect of telling the story, you gotta do it this way. So, but yes, very cerebral and grandiose. You got some changes in the tempo, which work well. Choirs and the pianos and the strings. It's like everything they've already had going. They put it all in this one song. But it's very well done. It's a very good closer, even though it's not how I would end it. But definitely one of the stronger songs on the album again. So definitely in the top half or so. But yes.
Was 8.5 minutes too long for it, though?
Yes, I wrote a little long at the end. I wrote that down. Yeah, I would have stopped it around maybe cut it down to about 5 or 6. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to do a spell check on your guys' notes and the word long, just to make sure you haven't misspelled it. See how many times it pops up on my computer.
Right. That's the thing. Like Alone works with 7 minutes and 50 seconds. That doesn't feel, sometimes a song doesn't feel long, and sometimes a song does.
Yep.
And it's why, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's just how it feels to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Cathedral Spires doesn't feel exactly like 10 minutes.
right. Cathedral Spires sucks you in.
Yeah.
Future Mankind sucks you in for a little while.
Yeah. You guys remember the third Lord of the Rings movie and the end, where it had three climaxes and it just kept on going and going and going?
My wife and I just watched that recently, so yes.
Yeah, and you think, oh, it's going to end, but there's more. That's what I felt like at the end of this album, because there are three finales: Nostradamus, actually New Beginnings, Nostradamus, and Future Mankind. You could have wrapped up the album. So it's like they weren't quite finished. It's like the music got ahead of the actual storyline, and it's always, you should do the finale. It's got to go out with a bang, but they did three bangs. So a little bit they needed to, that part of planning the album out, they probably didn't quite work that out. Great song. It reprises a lot of the themes. So it's like a symphony where there's a lot of the themes and music from the previous songs have been drawn in to tie it up. Hence, this is like a theatre show. Drama, it's intense, but it's a finale. But my quibble is there are at least three songs at the end of the album that could have been the finale, and they've just stretched it a bit too far.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So, all right. So I know this was a totally different take on how we did this album. So, but we still got a little bit, because they still toured this album. Well, not exactly, but they still did tours. So, John, hit us with some tour stuff, and we'll wrap this up.
Surely. So, Nostradamus tour proper was 57 dates, but only 11 of them were in North America. And out of those 11 in North America, 6 were in Canada. They started in Helsinki, Finland, and then the next show they did was the Sweden Rock Festival. Now, as we talked about in Angel Retribution, by the 2000s, you had a lot of heavy metal festivals and a lot of rock festivals. Festivals are so much part of our musical landscape and our foundation these days. But outside the United States, it was really getting big in Europe and South America. So they played the Sweden Rock Festival and the Trondheim Rock Festival. The Trondheim Rock Festival was in Norway. The Download Festival was in Australia. They played Nova Rock and in England. They also played in Luxembourg, and they also played in Slovakia, Czechia, Spain, Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, Denmark, Greece, and Romania. They did the Bang Your Head Festival in 2008. Also on that bill, Gravedigger, Lizzie Borden, Obituary, Onslaught, Yngwie Malmsteen, and Saxon. They did the Gods of Metal Festival in Bologna, Italy. Mangus, DC, maybe you were at that. But on that bill, we also had Iced Earth, Morbid Angel, Nightmare, The Sorrow, Enslaved in Infernal Poetry. Then they come back to the States. Their support was from Testament and Pop Evil. They played Seattle, Washington, and then they went to Victoria, Vancouver, both in British Columbia, Calgary, and Edmonton, and Alberta, Winnipeg, and Manitoba, and Saskatoon and Saskatchewan. Then they went back to the States. Okay, I'm sorry. That's the other tour I'm going to talk about. The other tour they did was called Priest Feast, and that was in 2009. Now, the set list is the same. They're opening with Prophecy, and they're playing Death in this set list as well. They're also, on this tour, they also brought back a lot of songs they hadn't played in a long time. Dissident Aggressor, Rock Hard Ride Free, Sinner, Between the Hammer and the Anvil. First time they played these three songs live. Eat Me Alive from Defenders of the Faith, Hell Patrol from Painkiller, and Angel from Angel of Retribution. For these tours, or these shows that they did, this would have been 2009. They did a lot of these shows also in Europe. They had Iced Earth opening, and they were promoting the Something Wicked albums, and they had Airborne opening some shows too. They were promoting the Running Wild album. By the way, when they did the Priest Feast shows, actually, I take that back. Those shows would have been part of the 2000. Those openers would have been part of 2008 tour. 2009, they had Testament for Formation of Damnation and Megadeth for United Abominations on the Priest Feast tour, which was hitting Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, Germany, Sweden, Denmark. March 10, 2009, Paula Sharp in Milan, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, France, and Belgium. Their last show was March 23, 2009 at the Heineken Music Hall in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And they also did play some shows in the U.S. in there. City Market in Kansas City, Missouri, Myth in Maplewood, Minnesota, Hard Rock Cafe, New York, New York. They also play Australia. They played in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Perth. Which city do you see them in, Peter?
Sydney, so it must have been that run.
There you go. That would have been the Nostradamus tour. It wouldn't have been Priest Feast. So that would have been 08.
Yeah.
They also played Seoul, South Korea, Nagoya, Osaka, Tokyo, Yokohama in Japan. And they also played in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and 2 dates in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So there you go. At Credit Card Hall.
There you go. There you go.
He memorized that, by the way. He memorized that. It was all these.
I'm not that good.
It's always fascinating to hear the tours, and where in all the cities they go to and stuff like that. That's like, it's always, you always wonder who you come across where you say, hey, yeah, I was at that show or something like that. But yeah, it's always fun to hear these things. So, but yeah, Nostradamus is basically the end of an era as KK decides, yeah, it's time to take a break, because as according to him, he was like, Bill and Jane and all them, they wanted them to get back in the studio, start writing again. He was like, bloody hell, come on. So he's like, it was time for him to, I think, maybe retire and just take a break and stuff of that nature. However, they would reconvene in 2014 with Redeemer of Souls. And this is where we introduce KK's replacement. But let's not get ahead of ourselves for that. So, Peter, you've got all kinds of wonderful content out there on Rock Daydream Nation.
Before we get to that, what are our ratings for the album?
Oh, yes. Peter, how would you rank it?
I'd give it a 7. I think it's misunderstood. So you've got to listen to the whole thing in its totality. You've got to give it a fair listen from start to finish. There's flaws in it, but I'd give it a 7 for its ambition, its breadth of musicology. I think this narrative that it's a stinker, it's pretentious or overblown by a couple of YouTube channels is unwarranted. And I think in a lot of, maybe in 10 years' time, it's going to get further critical appraisal. So I give it a healthy 7.
Yeah. Yeah, I would go along with that. I would say a 7. I think,
appreciate that. I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, the only thing I can say is, I think just like Wasp fans were getting a little disoriented when Blackie started singing about Jesus. I think there are a lot of the faith lyrics that comes out of this are very strong faith lyrics, in the Nostradamus story. I don't know, maybe that didn't set well with a lot of fans. So maybe that's another reason they're like, no, heavy metal shouldn't be singing about God and they shouldn't be singing about religion and all that kind of stuff. Well, maybe that's another reason, but I can still appreciate it for what it is. So yeah, I won't put it completely in the gutter, but I can appreciate the effort. But yes, 7, but yeah.
I respect and appreciate the ambition. I do like a lot of songs on here, but there's a lot to get through before you get there. So I always respect the opinions of everyone. I'm not high on this album. I give it a 5.
That's still respectable. Still respectable.
If
So
it was a highlight show, John,
Higher.
hmm,
Yeah, it would definitely be higher. Like if it was cut down to a single disc, if it was more along the lines of 55, 60 minutes, yes, I would definitely have it as a higher ranking. No question. It'd
but
probably
then
be more in 6.5 range at that point.
now this could be another show, but then what highlights do you put on it? I
another
mean,
show, please.
this could be a whole nother show in and of itself.
Yeah,
So
another
Dawn of
show.
Creation, Prophecy, Sands of Time, Pestilence and Plague, Conquest, Persecution, Alone, Visions, New Beginnings, Nostradamus, Future Mankind.
okay, there you go, folks. I can't
No complaints there.
not gonna argue with that. So anyway, so yes, Peter Kerr, you've got a lot of wonderful content out there. What's new? What's some stuff that's brewing that we need to be talking about and pushing for you and
Yeah.
advertising for you?
Well, I'm doing shows with you guys. Something, yeah, is always brewing in the Rock Daydream Nation kitchen, but just dropped a show with the wonderful Melissa Nee. And the premise of the show is good in concert, not so good on record, or vice versa, or same. And that was a lot of fun to do. I've got a show that's dropping in a couple of days' time with the wonderful Parish of Rock. I love that guy. And we are going to pick a single AC/DC Desert Island disc. That's a tough one. And then the tough show that everyone's been talking about that will finally come out in a week or so. So I'm working on that. And John the Music Nut and I have got a few little secret projects in the kitchen. So watch
Hint,
this
hint.
space. Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Well, John's just wrapped up that Y&T series. Of course, you can read them in the Y&T book from Tim Derling's Tim's Vinyl Confessions. The different Martin Popoff books, whether it's Thin Lizzy, whether it's Blue Oyster Cult. Of course, you can read me in the Robert Plant book. And Peter, you were in
Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah,
you're in
Blue
the
Oyster
Blue Oyster
Cult
Cult
book.
book as well. So that's right.
No. I wasn't in so many books.
You were
Thin Lizzy book.
You're in the Thin Lizzy
Lizzy
book. That's right. That's
Yes,
right.
with Martin. That was a
You didn't do the
gas.
Cure, did you? You weren't in that
Yes,
one,
I did.
right?
Yeah,
You
I
did.
was in the Cure and the
Okay.
Y&T as well.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you could if you like to read, there's a lot of good reading content out there. If you don't want to watch us ugly mugs, pontificate on music and stuff of that nature, you can read about us too. So there you go. So for my good friend John the Music Nut, man, it was golly, this has been such a journey. I'm enjoying every second of it. For Peter Kerr with Rock Daydream Nation, thank you for gate crashing this thing. I'm glad you
Thank you,
did.
Peter.
Thank you
Yeah, that
for
was a
being
lot of
on.
fun today.
This was
It was a lot of
great.
fun. Yeah.
Rest assured, you're going to see the three of us together at some point in some way, shape, or form, to kind of steal a line from Peter as the way he ends his shows. So because that is one thing that is for sure. Another thing that's for sure, rock forever. We'll see you guys next week
You
for
got another thing coming.
Redeemer's Souls. So take care, y'all.
See ya.